Iwo Jima is an island that's 760 miles from Tokyo. It was considered part of Japan. And they had 3 airfields on it, and we couldn't let those airfields continue to bomb our Navy and bomb our positions on other islands we were capturing as we were creeping towards Japan, and had to have Iwo Jima to go on to Okinawa. Matter of fact, learned a lot of lessons on Iwo Jima that were used on Okinawa. Don't tell me how many lives were saved on Okinawa because of the lessons learned on Iwo Jima. It's 760 miles away. It was also going to be used for fighters, United States fighter planes, to escort bombers on their way to Japan. It was also going to be used for a place for bombers that had been shot up to come and make emergency landings. And indeed, during the rest of the war, 2,400 B-29s landed on Iwo Jima, or they wouldn't have made it home. 27,000 crew, because a B-29 was a complicated bomber, very advanced, had a large crew of more than 10 men. 27,000 crew landed on Iwo Jima, people that might have put down at sea to be rescued or perhaps not rescued. It was an important battle, but it was a very intense battle because it was so close to the homeland. Like I said, it was considered to be virtually part of the Japanese homeland, and it was small. Iwo Jima is only 5 miles long. 5 miles, I would estimate, is about here to Haywood Mall. So just think about, in that 5 miles, 23,000 Japanese soldiers and very fortified, dug-in Japanese soldiers. There were 11 miles of underground tunnels. It was not but 5 miles long. And it wasn't wide. At its narrowest point, it's 800 yards wide at its narrowest point, and it's 2.5 miles wide at its widest point. It's not a lot of space there. 23,000 soldiers. We prepped the island with 74 days of air attacks, including attacks by B-24 bombers. It did very little damage to the defenders. They were so well fortified. And so, as an invading force, you're going to fight a defender who not only thinks he's defending his motherland and his emperor, and who thinks that surrender is dishonorable. There's literally no retreat because it's an island. So, the fighting was fierce. We invaded with a force of about 75,000 Marines. Not all, of course, landed simultaneously. We staged them in. The battle lasted 19 February to 26 March, and we staged in 75,000 Marines, one out of three of whom would be a casualty. There were 25,851 casualties out of those 75,000 Marines, 1 in 3. 6,825 were killed, and the rest of them were wounded, many grievously. There were 28% of all medals of honor given to Marines in World War II were given to Marines on Iwo Jima. 1/3 of all Marine casualties in the entire World War II were incurred on Iwo Jima. So, and actually I've got the numbers of medals of honor: 22 medals of honor to Marines, 5 medals of honor to members of the U.S. Navy. There were approximately 23,000 Japanese on the island. There were, at the end of the battle, only 216 captured. Most of these captured were either unconscious, knocked out, or grievously wounded because they didn't surrender. I don't know. I would say it would be very few Japanese that were just captured that just were walking around like you and I. On March 26, when the battle, quote unquote, ended, there were still 3,000 Japanese in the tunnels. And in the coming months, in the next 3 months, for example, there were 2,400 approximately Japanese that were either killed or captured as they came out of the tunnels to forage for food and look for food. As a matter of fact, 867 captured, 1,602 killed, and there were still some down there. As a matter of fact, the final 2 came out and surrendered in 1951. This is the enemy that our speaker faced. I can't imagine it. And it's not enough to just thank him for his service, but that's all that we can really do today, is thank him for his service, thank him for being here with us to tell us this story. And I want to thank one other person. I want to thank Dr. David Smith, who wrote this book, which is going to be available for you. 100% of all proceeds goes to charity. It's just $15, and if you want to give him 20, that's going to go to charity too. So we'll see if you can make a little bit more for charity today. I have my copy, and it's a tremendous book. And David, you did service to America by writing this book, by taking your time to record this and record information and things about a great man who, in my mind, having read this book, is a hero not once, but 3 times. A hero once for his service during World War II, a hero twice for all of his service to the women of Greenville in his medical practice, and a hero a 3rd time for his medical mission work in Africa. I think he's an incredible person, and your book, I think, will change people's lives and improve people's lives by inspiring them like it inspired me when I read it. So thank you, David, for this. So please give a warm welcome to Dr. Clarence Easley and Dr. David Smith.
How can I top that? Can you all hear me? Okay. First, before I start, I would like to pay tribute to 2 people that were very important in the Poinsett Club. And most of us who have been here a good while, I won't say how long, but we know we miss. They were both veterans, and they were both heroes, in my opinion. One of them was J.C. Roseman, who was a maitre d' here for, I think, 50 years. Is that true? I think so. And the second, he passed away just a couple of months ago, and we had a big celebration for him right before he died, and for his family. The second is Jim Pierce. And many of you knew Jim Pierce. He was a wonderful man. He was a Marine. He was a philanthropist, and he also was a very, very, very successful businessman. If y'all remember Pierce Young and Angel, and also Budweiser of Greenville. I tried to help him on the number 2 pot in my younger days. But anyway, Jim was always around the Poinsett Club when I would come down here, and Kit too with his wife, and they passed away. Jim unfortunately didn't get to tell his story, but he was on the New Hebrides. He was in the 1st Marine Division on New Hebrides, and then on Petaloo, which was a heck of a battle. And number 3, he was a captain and on Okinawa, where he received the Bronze Star. And we didn't talk about the war, but I would have loved to, and he would have made a great speaker, probably much better than I am. But anyway, here goes, and David's got a word or 2.
Well, I wanted to thank Dr. Eddie Ellison, because without his help, I'm not sure this would have been published. So thank you, Eddie. Appreciate it. And as I've said before, I wasn't supposed to write this. Some other folks were supposed to write it, but when it became obvious that they weren't going to come through, I told Dr. Easley that I wasn't a writer, but I was the best he was going to get. So we then proceeded a lot of sessions. But we're going to start in Morristown, Tennessee on December 7th, 1941, and go through December 7th, 1942 again.
I also want to tell you I appreciate my wife, Elliot, who has supported me in his advanced years, and we've had a great time going to Africa and other things together. And she looks after me every day, and I appreciate it. I started in a small town in Tennessee, and I'm going to start on Pearl Harbor Day. Well, I got up, it was Sunday, December the 7th, and I was 16 years old, plus 2 months. And I got up, I had a paper route for the Knoxville paper, and I did that Sunday morning, and I carried my papers and came back and went to church, because in that generation, everybody went to church on Sunday, and wasn't much else to do anyway. Always fun. But anyway, after that, my brother was a student at Carson Newman College, which is a small liberal arts college in Jefferson City, Tennessee. It's a Baptist school, and he was I think he was a sophomore. But anyway, he came to me. I had never with a proposal to double date with two girls from out in the country, and the mother wouldn't let her go unless the little sister went along. It was a safety precaution, I guess. But anyway, we were riding in the dirt road, and he had borrowed his roommate's car. Cars were not easy to come by in those days, and he had the radio on, and they broke in and said the Japanese had attacked Pearl Harbor. As you know, Pearl Harbor has been chronicled, particularly in our community, by Jim Shoemaker. And many of you have heard Jim. He was a young man whose family was on Fort Island. His father was head of the Navy personnel there. And anyway, we got the following year was a tough year in the history of the United States. We were caught short after Pearl Harbor. The Navy essentially had a World War I fleet. In fact, the Arizona, have any of you visited Arizona? All right, the Arizona keel was laid by Franklin Roosevelt as Secretary of the Navy in 1918. And I believe the Enterprise was luckily not in Pearl Harbor, but everything else about was, and we suffered a lot of damage. They had gone to Wake Island to reinforce it with supplies. They were valiant there. So anyway, the first year was tough. And as a young man, we would listen to the radio and hear about the bombing over in England, and listen to, what's his name? Everett R. Murrah. I don't know why names. But anyway, Everett R. Murrah came on and tell us about the bombing, and it was impressive. And that year, Roosevelt and Churchill met, and they decided to defer sending assistance to the Philippines and to work on the war against Germany. The day after Pearl Harbor, I went in our high school. We had an auditorium, and the big radio was put in, and we got to hear Roosevelt's famous Day of Infamy speech, and during that following year, we all saw the Bataan Death March, which made a terrible impression on me, because I was on the Movietone News on this double feature on Saturday, about good Western features on Saturday, and it began to prey on all of us, and so 4 of us decided to join the Navy on December the 7th, 1942. I had turned 17 and was a senior in high school, and unfortunately, I'm about the only physician in Greenville that didn't complete high school. I got some friends here that may be surprised with that, because they thought I was better educated. But anyway, my mother got to accept my diploma. The governor was charitable and decided to give us diplomas anyway. And so, but I was, in the meantime, in December, I rode the cattle car across the country to San Diego to the Naval Training Center. And after suffering a case of measles, which was not fun, and being there for Christmas, after boot camp, we went to a medical corps school over in Balboa Park. Beautiful. If you've been to San Diego, it's no more beautiful town, weather-wise, in the United States. There's a whole lot of people there because of that, I'm sure. But anyway, after that, I went into the hospital corps. Now, as you all know, the Marines do not have a medical corps per se. The Navy doctors and corpsmen are assigned from the Navy to the Marine Corps. And after a short stint at Treasure Island Naval Hospital in the San Francisco Bay, where my main job was riding ambulance and go and pick up beating ships coming in from Guadalcanal. And that was my first sight of young men who were really sick, because most of them suffered from the severe form of malaria, falciparum malaria, and they all had atabrine, and they had other problems too, and they'd gone through an awful lot in Guadalcanal. We had one division of Marines, that was the first division, and obviously, and they went through a terrible time in Guadalcanal because they had 3 rifles from World War I, and the Navy didn't help them very much for a while because of lack of fast planes. Then after the Philippines were taken, and you all maybe can chronicle what life was like for those people being taken into prison camps in the Philippines and then eventually into to the mainland of Japan. And most of you maybe, or many of you have read Jill Hiltbrand's recent book, Unbroken, which they made a movie of how many of our young men were treated as prisoners of war. And so you can see why the Marines really didn't take many prisoners. That was not high on their list. From there, I went to Camp Pendleton, California, and formed where the 4th Marine Division was being formed, and did a lot of field training, and then we practice landed on the coast of California. One night we were trying to come in and ran into a storm, and our coxswain on our ship, LCVP, he got lost, and we ended up on Catalina Islands. They had to find us. But anyway, there's always as we say in the Marines, snafu. But anyway, the 24th and 25th Marines were from Camp Pendleton. The 23rd Regiment was formed at Camp Lejeune on the East Coast. We all joined together in one armada and in January of 1944, went to the Marshall Islands. Now, the Marshall Islands were not very well defended. We had a short campaign, intensive campaign there, but it was a great place because it was an atoll, which is they had a large area where the ships could sink anchor, and they could be resupplied. And anyway, we had the short battle. I spent most of the time in helping Dr. Long, who was our battalion surgeon, treat casualties. I'd never seen casualties, but I learned quickly to help him. I would say one thing about the Marshalls. We lost an outstanding Clemson graduate who was Colonel Dice, and Colonel Dice received one of 2 Congressional Medals of Honor that were given on the Marshalls, and he was I'm going to get David, since David is a Clemson man, I'm going to let David tell you about Colonel Dice.
He was one of the last casualties on that battle, but he also was given the Carnegie Medal, which is the award for civilian heroism. While he was a student at Clemson, he saved a couple of women that were going out to sea at Breach Inlet. So for that, he was given the Carnegie Medal, and then subsequently was given the Medal of Honor in World War II. And is the only person ever to have received both. So
So I think that's an interesting story, and you might see it on the highway when you go down to the Masters. I think the highway is named for Colonel Dice Highway. After the marshals, we came back to Maui in the Hawaiian Islands, where our camp was up in the mountains. We had a large tent camp. We had a lot of rain, and we had a lot of marching, and we had 3.2 beer, which wasn't bad. But anyway, but anyway, we got prepared to go to our next campaign, and it was not an easy one. We loaded up ship, went to Pearl Harbor, and we rendezvoused at Kwajalein with a large armada, and on the way from Kwajalein to Saipan, June 6th was the landing in Normandy, the big D-Day that you see on TV. We were aboard ship, but our D-Day was June the 15th, 1944, and we had three divisions, two Marine divisions, the 2nd and the 4th, and then we had the 27th Army Division in the middle. And so the three divisions landed. Saipan is a rather large island, and in fact, recently I don't know what happened, but they just had a typhoon, and I said there were 54,000 people living on the island, and it has been in our hands ever since World War II. So Saipan, we landed, and I went in on about the 5th or 6th wave, and we immediately dug us a hole and began to treat casualties, and there were a lot of them. And David will tell you that I don't know how many casualties on Saipan, David. He's my statistician.
Find the statistics. 4th Division not on Saipan and Tinian lost approximately 6,000 either wounded or killed.
Yeah.
And let me just say that when you do the research for this, every reference you find will give a different number for its KIA or WIA, but that's an approximate figure.
Okay.
Also, and Saipan was 14 miles long by 15 miles wide compared to Roy Namur and the Marshals, who were approximately 1 square mile each. So this was a much bigger island.
Much bigger. After we evacuated many casualties from our evacuation station. We had 3 doctors. Dr. One was my a real hero, and that's Dr. Max Long, who was a role model. He was a cool character in Under Fire. I'll tell you that. He was someone that you wanted to emulate, and I really did appreciate his. He was like a father to me out there. Anyway, we after some time, they decided they needed to send us up to the front lines to relieve the frontline infantry. That was an eye-opener for me, and we took over in the front lines, and my squad and company, and we encountered a great deal of enemy resistance. The Marines love to make smoke, make fire and flares up in the sky during the night, and then in the morning we'd put those light tanks out in front and move out. The Marines didn't go backwards, they went forwards. And but anyway, on the foxhole, I was up there and kind of uneasy about the situation, and we sent out squads because we tried to connect with the 27th Army Division on our left, and so when we had we heard a rustling. We had a password, and the password was, in those days baseball was king, and the Marine would say Babe Ruth, and the password was Lou Gehrig. two other great baseball heroes of that era. And one night, I tell you, we heard a rustling in front of us, and one of our young men from Utah his light bulb wasn't too bright. But anyway, he said, "Halt! Who goes there?" And he said, and this voice comes back in something in Japanese, and he said, "What'd you say?" About that time, about 25 hand grenades hit this area. Marines loved hand grenades, and I did too, but I didn't throw them, but they did. I tried to. Anyway, we got to the next, about a day or two later, we kept going forward, and we got up toward the northern end of the island, which was called Marpy Point. And my squad went out to try to clear an area, and of course I went with them, and we came under direct fire. And Sergeant Snuffy Smith, everybody, because of the cartoon character, ever Smith was not David, it was Snuffy in those days. And so Snuffy got a shot in front of us, and he hollered, "Doc, Doc." That's what they call all corpsmen. They don't, But anyway, I went out. I had my trusty 03 bag, which contained battle dressings, morphine in morphine sulfate, and sulfur powder. We sprinkle sulfur powder on everything from chickens to casualties. But anyway, so I crawled out to get him and put his arm over my shoulder. He was hit in the forearm, and I put him over my shoulder. About that time, as I started toward him, then that's when a Japanese soldier appeared with a hand grenade, and the Japanese had percussion grenades. They would tap them on their helmet. They didn't pull a pin like we had. So I heard the tap tap. And so I covered Snuffy and got hit in the back a little bit, and not bad. So anyway, they evacuated both of us. But anyway, I happened to carry a little bit of that shrapnel to this day, and I went in for an X-ray a few years back, and my good friend, the orthopedic surgeon, it was X-ray, said, "Huss, what's this metal doing in you?" I said, "It's a little remembrance from the Japanese." But anyway, it wasn't bad. And I went back to action, and we went from Saipan on to Tinian, and 2 weeks afterwards. And Tinian was a beautiful island, more flat, with a beautiful airstrip. It wasn't long enough, but we had the Seabees, and we took it in a short time. I don't know what our casualties were there, but not bad, relatively speaking.
Right, that again, I just have the total from the 4th Division.
All right.
6,000 for both campaigns.
Okay.
The Japanese casualties was approximately 36,000.
Yeah. So anyway, we had a real. Of course, during that period of time, I saw my first B-29. I couldn't believe anything that big could fly. But anyway, it was a large plane. But anyway, we went back to, after Saipan and Tinian, we took a LST back to Maui. Now, any of you have been on an LST? It's like a pontoon boat. It's got a big bay in it that they put tanks and stuff in it. And anyway, it went about 9 knots or 9 miles an hour. I don't know how. It was very slow, but we had little fresh water and not a lot of food. But we got back to Maui in good time. So then we got our replacements from our casualties, which we lost in the Saipan-Tinian campaign, and practiced for Iwo Jima. Of course, we didn't know where we were going until we got aboard ship. We boarded ship in Maui. Maui was a beautiful island, pristine island. It did not have the high-rise hotels and The beach there was pristine and beautiful, and we practiced landed there some too, and we had a great time up in the mountains, marching every day and going to the NCO club at night and inhaling a little 3.2 along the way. Then we boarded ship in February of 1945. And then can I go on?
Sure.
Okay. And we went over to Pearl Harbor and picked up some more ships and went out to Kwajalein, and this was one of the largest armadas that you can visualize. By that time, we had a lot of the small carriers, and we had more destroyers. America had turned out a fantastic armada, and the Japanese still had a significant navy. Which on Saipan, I forgot to say this, I looked around on the second day, all the ships were gone. And it was this Battle of the Philippine Seas, which was a significant last big naval battle of the Pacific campaign. And we just annihilated the Japanese fleet during that period of time, which was a wonderful thing. But when you look out there and didn't see the Navy, you wondered who's coming next. But anyway, we got back to Iwo Jima. They told us aboard ship we were going to land on this small island that they had bombarded, and Bob has given you a lot of information about Iwo that I won't repeat, of course. It was a desolate island. It was a volcanic island, and Iwo means sulfur fumes, and the smell was horrible. There's very little vegetation, and if you wanted to dig a foxhole, all you did was scoop out a hole in a volcanic ash, which I promptly did. But anyway, the next we landed. We went on to the day of Saipan, Iwo Jima landing. I went in on our division. We landed about 60,000 folks on the D-Day, and they didn't shell us badly for a little while, but boy, after we got in there, and they began to use. They came out of the caves, which we didn't know about, and they began to put mortars and artillery pieces. Some of the artillery pieces had been captured from the British in Singapore, which they had brought over there, and they rolled them out of the cave and bombarded us. And it was up and down the beach. And so landing on that, the D-Day, it was, I believe it's the longest day of my life. Maybe some other, shortest day for a lot of others, because we'd lost an awful lot of casualties. When we landed, it was people were looking for help. I had a sea bag full of the battle dressings and the sulfur powder and the morphine, and people. As I say now, I opened my office kind of early. They were coming after you. They needed help, and we got such shelling that one of the other corpsmen and we got under a half track that had come in off of a landing craft and sunk into the volcanic ash. Couldn't move. They'd put that metal stuff down, but it didn't move. So I got under there because they were shelling so severely, and they. So Montney was my cohort under there. We were waiting for the shelling to slow down, and a shell went by, hit near us, and it took a canteen off my hip and hit his jaw and took about a third of his jaw or more out. And I said, "You lucky SOB, you're going to get off of here." And all of a sudden, and so I felt the water trickle down my leg, and I thought, "My God, I'm gone." But anyway, luckily I survived that and was not wounded. But anyway, it was the campaign. If I have a video that says it's 36 days of hell. because the Marines had to go up and into the caves and they used flamethrowers and what we call shape charges, and use those and try to flush them out. But they would come out at night and attack, and that's where we had a lot of trouble. And so progress was very slow. And you talk about going 100 yards, it was not easy. And we did not control the first airfield. And on about the third day, well, it was almost the same day that the flag went up. The 5th Division had mounted 2 flags. There were 2 flags. They put up a smaller flag and then took it down and then put up a larger flag down toward the little mountain on there called Suribachi. And y'all have heard of that. And so that was captured on the most famous picture, photograph made of the Pacific War, I would think. That's Joe Rosenthal's the raising of the flag on Iwo, which is a significant thing. But I saw that flag, and I was proud of it. And but we got down and back, and we evacuated so many casualties, and sometimes we just had to we used plasma. They brought some blood out that they had them with dry ice, but blood was hard to warm up and get going. And I see nurses out here that you know how it is with blood. But anyway, we used a lot of plasma, and we used a lot of morphine, and we had a lot of casualties. So it was a terrible battle, and we lost 2 of our doctors. 3 doctors were wounded on D-Day, and 5 of our corpsmen, of 30 corpsmen, were killed the first day. And so the rest of us worked hard. Dr. Long was a magnificent physician, and many of the Marines would be wounded, and they didn't want to leave until he saw. He inspired that confidence in the Marines, and also in me, because I tell you, he was wonderful. So anyway, after 36 days, we were supposed to go back to Saipan and take it in 4 or 5 days, and of course they missed the boat on that. And then we were supposed to go to Okinawa and be in that campaign, but division was so badly had lost so many casualties that we had to go all the way back to Maui, which I was mighty happy to do. And then, so we were there and trained to go into Kyushu in the mainland was the plan until President Truman, the B-29s, of course, started the campaign, and he decided to drop the bomb, and he warned the Japanese that he had a terrible weapon, that they better surrender. And they ignored him. Unfortunately, he dropped not only 1 bomb, he dropped 2. And so then we huddled by our little radio in our tent and listened to the radio at night. And H.B. Kaltenborn was a famous commentator of the war, and he was on the news on the radio station out of Honolulu, and we were listening to him. And the Japanese had one stipulation to retain the emperor. And of course, we said, we just retain him and let the Marines will take care of him later. But anyway, so anyway, they decided to accept the surrender, and appropriately, General Jonathan Wainwright, the highest ranking officer captured by the Japanese on the Philippines, was given the privilege of signing the war when they met on the USS Missouri, which, you know, the association with Truman. So it was a great day. And then they let us, they came in, and about a month later they said, you can go home on leave. I didn't have enough points being so young. I was 20 years old by then, and hadn't been home since I left in 1942 when the high school band came down to see us off and kissed my mother goodbye. And unfortunately, she had passed away at the age of 44 from cancer while I was overseas, and they didn't let me come home. But anyway, it was one of the greatest days of my life after that was to come through the Golden Gate on the heavy cruiser Baltimore. They were trying to get folks back from the war, and we had the hot bunk system, and the hot bunk meant that you had one bed, one bunk, and 2 Marines. So you had to match to see who had the day and who got the night. The rest of the time we played cribbage on the deck and hope for better days. And so, but going back into Pearl Harbor and going into San Francisco was an emotional experience. And then I got to go home for a 30-day leave. And when I got on the train in Memphis, I heard the first young woman with a southern accent I'd heard in 3 years. I hadn't seen a woman in 3 years. But anyway, the young women were going back to UT in Knoxville to start the fall quarter. Well, I wasn't out yet, but I did enjoy that train ride listening to those girls talk. After that, I was assigned to the naval station in Millington, which was just out of Memphis, and my job was to help discharge naval and Marine personnel. And that was not too bad because we could go down to the Peabody and listen to the big bands, and they came through there and have a good time. So it was not a terrible thing, but in March I started UT in 1946 as a student and graduated from medical school in Memphis, which pre-med was in Knoxville. Then I went to Memphis and I came to Greenville in 1951, and I've essentially been here ever since. And I had a good practice, and I appreciate Eddie Ellison and David, whom I've had the privilege of working with, knowing, and being part of my life for the last almost 50 years. And so what a blessing I have had in Greenville. And I hope that if you have any questions, I hope I haven't gone too long. Oh, I have. Sorry. But if anybody's got any questions, I'll give you a minute or two, but then we're going to close it up.
Yes. What was the ratio between corpsmen and Marines?
Well, every squad about had a corpsman that was assigned to them. And one corpsman, you had about, a squad was how many, 30 Marines? Joe, huh? Maybe Joe Jennings can tell me. How many is this?
Squad was probably 13, Tim was probably 30.
30, I would say 30 Marines. That's my guess too. And we became a part of the squad. I was a farm. My rank was pharmacist. I got the pharmacist mate 2nd class. Now that means very little because the only ships I was on, I ever traveled on, was a transport ship with a bunks from here to the top of the ceiling almost, and with the Marines. We went from campaign to campaign. So my whole, essentially my career was with the 4th Marine Division. So any other questions?
Other questions? Yes, sir. Mike.
Did you ever treat a Japanese?
No, I did not. My outfit did not look kindly upon the Japanese, and we were on one time when I had to go with a squad, but I was the fear factor was high at that time because they said, "Doc, you have to go too with a squad." We were going to connect up with the Army to our left, and it was at night, and I was afraid that we'd get friendly fire. You know how it is. Everybody shoots anything, it moves. And we came across a Japanese soldier who was obviously very terminal. And they said, "Doc, why don't you finish him off?" I didn't do that. That's just not my nature. But anyway, I did not treat any Japanese soldiers. We just didn't take many prisoners.
Yes, sir, Jim.
Hotz, did you carry a weapon?
I did. You know, the First Division went in with the Geneva Convention with the, I'm sorry I didn't cover that. They had the red armband cross, Red Cross armband, but the casualty rate was higher in that group than in the Marines. So they decided very quickly that we better take that armband off of the corpsman from then on in the war. And so we were, in fact, we had to go through, I had to learn to field strip a M1. I also learned how to field strip a BAR, which was, as I would say, hell to carry, but it was a lifesaver in combat. And so I carried a carbine, which we called a pea shooter, and but it was not a really good weapon in combat, but it was better than no weapon at all. But anyway, so to answer your question quickly, we were armed. We had to be.
Other questions?
Can
Hotz,
I-
I'm gonna-
Can I add?
Yes, go ahead.
There is a story about two deer on Maui, but it was sensitive, so we don't have to approach Dr. E to see if he'll relate that to you later. And my main contribution was not in writing this book, but in nagging Dr. Easley enough on those long nights on call that he would talk about this, and hearing with him his first-person accounts of those Central Pacific battles.
Any other questions? I'm going to ask Hotz to wind up with one story. He told me just this right before we started. He's wearing a lapel pin that indicates he's a holder of the Purple Heart, and I commented upon him, and he told me about someone that gave it to him, that he said it inspired him, and I'm thinking, you know, you're such an inspiration to everybody. Who in the world would it be that would inspire you? Share us the story
All right.
of that lapel pin.
My grandson, who was born in Greenville and lived here till my son moved to Pennsylvania to work. He joined the Army about 8 or 9 years ago, several years ago, and he was in the Army and went to Iraq as part of the 10th Mountain Division and saw a lot of combat in Iraq. And then he came back and they sent him to IED school in Florida, and he ended up in Afghanistan. And 3 years ago, in October, I had a phone call from my son in Pennsylvania, and he says, Rob, my grandson has been hit. He was clearing an IED, and he stepped on one, and he lost his legs. And he was, this was October 3 years ago, October the 15th, I can tell you exactly. And so they treated him in Afghanistan and sent him to Germany, and then back to, he ended up at Walter Reed. He's been there now 3 years. His left leg was amputated so high that he could not wear a prosthesis. His right leg was okay, but his left leg, and so it was very difficult. And the problem is he had to undergo a number of operations, and you can't imagine what he's married, and his wife supported him. She's a wonderful woman, and they stayed in an apartment, and they're still there today. But he finally, after a number of operations, they got bone growth in there to allow him to wear a prosthesis. And you can't imagine what that means to him, but I can, and I'm sure you can too. But anyway, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, he drove down from Walter Reed to a Clemson football game because his father was and most of our family are Clemson folks, and so they, except me, and I'm a UT man all the way. But anyway, to see him walking into Tommy's Ham House with on both prosthesis was an emotional experience for me. But his wife, they sent me in the mail this lapel Purple Heart. And I value it greatly because the two of us share. He really went through hell. I did not. I went through a lot of things, but not like he did. Going through that is an unbelievable experience. But he's going to be out soon and going. They're going to build a house for him in Florida, in Destin, and his wife will be employed down there, and they'll have a life. Anyway, that's a long story made short, I hope.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Hotz. Thank you, David. Please join me.
Thank you for coming. We have a book if anybody wants it.